A profound and spreading sense of crisis is enveloping the Ukrainian forces dug in around the vital city of Pokrovsk. From the mud-filled trenches and shattered buildings that constitute the last line of defense in this part of the Donetsk region, a consistent and alarming message is emerging from the soldiers themselves. It speaks not only of overwhelming Russian firepowers and relentless attacks, but of a deeper, more corrosive problem. The collapse of morale. These are not official statements released by military spokespeople in Kyiv, but desperate communication from men on the brink. They describe a grim reality where the will to fight is being systematically eroded by exhaustion, immense losses, and a growing belief that they have been left to face an impossible situation with inadequate support. The battle for Pokrovsk, long understood as a critical point for Ukraine's defensive strategy in the Donbass, appears to be entering a new and dangerous phase, one where the psychological endurance of its defenders is being tested to the absolute limit. The outcome of this struggle may not be decided by tactical maneuvers alone, but by the spirit of the soldiers tasked with holding the line. The Russian military strategy targeting Pokrovsk has been a brutal but effective campaign of attrition, designed to crush Ukrainian defenses through sheer volume of force. Russian commanders are employing a multi-pronged assault, attempting to create a pincer movement that would encircle the remaining Ukrainian units inside and around the city. This involves constant pressure from the east, coupled with flanking maneuvers from the north and south, aimed at cutting the critical supply routes that keeps the garrison alive. The primary tool in this assault is overwhelming firepower. Ukrainian positions are subjected to round-the-clock bombardment from artillery, multiple launch rocket systems, and swarms of explosive drones that hunt for any signs of movement. The most devastating weapon in the Russian arsenal, however, has become the guided aerial bomb. These massive explosives, launched from aircraft safely beyond the reach of Ukraine's depleted air defense, slam into command posts, underground bunkers, and fortified buildings, reducing them to rubble in an instant. The force of this explosion is so immense that they can destroy even well-prepared defensive positions, causing not only physical destruction, but also severe psychological trauma to the survivors. For the Ukrainian soldiers enduring this onslaught, the experience is harrowing. They are forced to conserve what little ammunition they have for their own artillery, firing only at the most critical targets. This creates a vast disparity in firepower, leaving them unable to effectively counter the continuous Russian shelling. The strategic importance of Pokrovsk cannot be overstated. For years, it has served as a primary logistical hub for the Ukrainian military in the Donetsk region, a central point for receiving supplies, coordinating troops' movement, and treating the wounded. Its fall would not just mean the loss of the city. It would represent a fundamental breakdown of Ukraine's entire defensive structure in the Donbass, potentially opening a path for Russian forces to advance deeper into Ukrainian-controlled territory toward the Dnipro River. The defenses in front of the city, once considered formidable, are now fragmented and weakened. The soldiers holding these positions have been fighting for months without relief, their physical and mental resilience worn down by the ceaseless combat and the knowledge that every day the enemy pushes a little closer. The stories coming from the front lines paint a vivid picture of the human cost of this battle. These are accounts shared between soldiers, in messages to family, and with independent journalists who managed to get close to the fighting. A soldier from the 47th Mechanized Brigade, a unit that has seen some of the most intense combat, described the acute shortage of ammunition. He explained that his platoon might receive enough ammunition for their rifles to last a day of normal fighting, but they are facing repeated large-scale infantry assault. These attacks, often referred to as midwave, involve groups of Russian soldiers advancing across open ground with little regard for their own lives. Their purpose being to overwhelm defenses and exhaust the defenders. Limited supplies of bullets. The Ukrainian soldiers said that they are often forced to hold their fire until the attackers are dangerously close. A nerve-wracking experience that adds to the immense stress of their situation. He spoke of the frustration of watching enemy armored vehicle operate with impunity because his unit lacked the anti-tank missiles needed to destroy them. Another soldier, a medic attached to a different brigade holding the southern flank of Pokrovsk, shared a story of deep exhaustion and dwindling manpower. His unit has been on the front line for over 4 months without any rotation to the rear for rest and recovery. He said the original fighting force is down to less than half its strength due to casualties. The replacements they receive are often young, with minimal training, and they are thrown into one of the most brutal battles of the war. The physical toll is immense. Soldiers are suffering from a lack of sleep, poor nutrition, and the constant stress of bombardment. The medic described a sense of detachment among the men, quiet resignation that has replaced the fighting spirit they once had. He said that the simple act of evacuating a wounded soldier has become a life-threatening mission. Russian drones constantly patrol the skies over the few remaining access roads, targeting ambulances and any vehicle attempting to move toward the rear. This means that many of the wounded do not receive medical care in time, a fact that weighed heavily on the morale of their comrades who are forced to watch them suffer. This feeling of being abandoned is a recurring theme. A junior officers in command of a small reconnaissance unit express his frustration with what he sees as a disconnect between the reality of the front and the orders coming from senior command. He spoke of being tasked with missions that seem impossible given the resources available, leading his men to believe they are being treated as disposable. He said the official news report from Kyiv often speak of a stable defense and successful counterattack, a narrative that feels like a fantasy to the soldiers who are losing ground every day. This gap between the official stories and their life experience has created a deep sense of cynicism and distrust toward their own leadership. The soldiers feel that their sacrifices are not being acknowledged and that the true state of the war is being hidden from the Ukrainian public. This belief fosters a sense of isolation, as if they are fighting a separate, more desperate war than the one their country is being told about. The crisis at Pokrovsk is not occurring in a vacuum. It is directly connected to broader political and logistical problems. The flow of military aid from Western partners, which has been the lifeblood of the Ukrainian war effort, has reportedly become slower and less predictable. While large packages of assistance are announced in Western capital, the process of getting the actual equipment and ammunition to the soldiers at the front is fraught with delays and logistical hurdles. The new shipment of artillery shells is of little use to the defenders of Pokrovsk if it remains in a warehouse hundreds of miles away. This slowdown is perceived by some as a consequence of a shift in political winds, particularly in the United States under the administration of President Donald Trump. His focus on an American-first foreign policy has led to greater scrutiny of aid packages and a preference for loans over direct grants. Recent statements from key officials in the Trump administration have been interpreted by some observers as signaling a wavering commitment to a complete Ukrainian victory. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has publicly emphasized the need for a realistic path to a negotiated settlement, a departure from the previous administration's rhetoric of supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes. Meanwhile, Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth has stressed the importance of accountability for all American-supplied weapon systems, leading to new layers of bureaucracy that can slow down the delivery process. While these policies are framed in Washington as a responsible oversight and a push for diplomatic solution, on the front line in Ukraine, they are often perceived as a weakening of support. The soldiers who listen to international news on their phones when they have a signal hear these statements and wonder if their most powerful ally is preparing to reduce its involvement. This uncertainty about future support contributes significantly to the feeling of hopelessness. as they know they cannot sustain the fight against a much larger Russian army without a steady and massive infusion of Western aid. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent's focus on the economic structuring of aid as repayable loans has also added a layer of complexity, with Ukrainian officials reportedly struggling to navigate the financial requirements set by Washington. Internally, Ukraine faces its own significant challenges that impact the front line. The country's mobilization effort have struggled to keep pace with the high rate of casualties. Years into the full-scale war, finding enough new recruits to fill the ranks has become increasingly difficult. There is a political reluctance to enforce a wider, more aggressive draft, as it is unpopular with the public and carries economic consequences. This hesitation means that existing brigades are not replenished quickly enough, forcing exhausted units like those at Pokrovsk to stay in combat far beyond their effective capacity. Furthermore, while Ukraine has made efforts to combat corruptions, report persists of resources being mishandled or siphoned off before they can reach the front. The soldier does not need to see proof of high-level corruption to feel its effect. He feels it when he is given inadequate food, when his vehicle lacks spare parts, or when he is told there are no more shells for his motor. These local tangible failure of the supply chain reinforce the belief that the system is failing them. In conclusion, the situation around Pokrovsk has become a microcosm of the wider challenge facing Ukraine. The city is under severe military pressure from a determined and well-supplied enemy, but the greater threat may be the internal decay of morale among its defender. The combination of relentless Russian attack, critical shortage of ammunition and manpower, and a growing sense of abandonment by both their own leadership and some Western partners has created a toxic environment of despair. The voice from the trenches tell a story of soldiers who feel they are being asked to do the impossible with insufficient means. The fall of Pokrovsk, should it happen, would be a major strategic victory for Russia. However, a collapse driven by broken morale would be even more dangerous for Ukraine, as it could signal a psychological tipping point in the war. A loss of the will to fight could spread from one unit to another, potentially triggering a wider unraveling of the front line that no amount of emergency aid could easily fix. The fate of the Donbass now rests heavily on the shoulders of these exhausted soldiers. As leaders in Kyiv and in allied capitals, including President Trump and his national security team, watch and weigh their next move, the decisions made in the coming days, both on the battlefield and in political chambers, will be critical in determining whether the defenders of Pokrovsk can find the strength to hold on. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel. And so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to Socaine Rich, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first one's on me. But if you have watched the show before, it's like you are a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build the show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.